Hi, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Inside Sailtrek SOC. My name is Rhea. I am your host, and I'm very pleased to welcome my next guest, Gabriella and Vernon Lindsay. How are you?
Well, well, thank you.
We're fine. Thanks so much for having us.
Well, you guys have, it's a site and it's a lifestyle, obviously, La Vida Lindsay. You have 3 children, originally from Chicago. Tell us a little bit about yourselves first. Whoever wants to go first.
So we're originally from Chicago. We met at university, and once I finished my master's degree, he was in school for his doctorate degree. We got married, had kids, and we're kind of living the regular old American dream type life. We both had jobs. I was a teacher at an elementary school. He was a professor at a university, and just going about the everyday, day-to-day stuff, and slowly but surely realized we were getting more and more caught up in like the keeping up with the Joneses, like getting the stuff, having the nice house, having the multiple cars, having the things that the kids need to have and the lifestyle that we're supposed to have. And slowly but surely we were kind of starting to feel a little bit burnt out by it. The race to I don't know, fit in. I don't know what you would say other than that. Mm-hmm. And we were missing out a lot on, like our kids growing up. They were in daycare all day long from early in the morning till late in the evening. By the time we were getting home, it was like, hurry up, eat dinner, get dressed, get changed, go to bed, wake up, do the whole thing again. And in the midst of all of this, my mom, who lived in Mazatlán, Mexico at the time, passed away unexpectedly. And, moving to Mexico, we were married in Mexico. Moving to Mexico was something we had always said, we're going to do that someday. We're going to move abroad someday. I want to live a different lifestyle someday. When my mom passed away, it was kind of like one of those, like, well, what's this someday we keep talking about? Like, what if someday really isn't as far away as we think it is? We were young. We thought, you got forever, but, really, do you? And so it kind of prompted us to kind of reevaluate what we were doing on a day-to-day basis and, say, hey, maybe what are we waiting for? Maybe we don't need to wait and we need to just go ahead and start living this dream that we have now versus waiting. And so within 6 months from her passing, I think we had sold our house, our cars, all of our stuff. We had 10 suitcases and we boarded a plane for Mexico. And that was in 2016, and we've been in Mexico, and now we're on Antigua, the island of Antigua in the Caribbean, West Indies, and that is where we are.
Mm-hmm. Well, she said it all.
What is it about Antigua that made you take the move from Mexico? Because obviously that had been something you guys had discussed for a long time, was Mexico. But once you got to Mexico, what made you take that leap over?
There was a job. We were in Mexico and we were working our entrepreneurial hustles. I was traveling back and forth to the United States for consulting work. Gabriella was doing some work online with coaching, and we needed a way to create some sustainable income. Business was okay, but it wasn't creating the dependable income that we needed every single month. And so I found this position online at a medical school here on the island, and I applied and said, if it comes through, it comes through. And in the very last minute, it did come through for us, and we made the move. Again, we just jumped. We packed up our suitcases, and like in 2 weeks, we got rid of everything that we had in Mexico that we no longer needed, and then we came to Antigua.
So how long have you been there now?
It was 3 years in July, so just over 3 years we've been here on Antigua.
Mm-hmm.
So you experienced the island just prior to COVID. So you know what it's like on a normal year. How have you sort of pivoted and worked within sort of the issues that have happened on the island, and how has that affected you as a family?
Well, the good and the interesting thing about island life is that it is very slow paced and there's not a whole lot to do. A lot of what there is to do, at least for us, is outdoors. So it's going to the beach, it's going hiking, it's just enjoying nature. So in some ways, pre-COVID, post-COVID, in those regards haven't really changed all that much. You can still, go, although we are getting some new restrictions hitting us now. They're closing the beaches in the afternoons, which is unfortunate. But, for the most part, we've been able to kind of get out, go to the beach, go hiking, do some of the outdoor things that we were used to doing prior to COVID. But it has definitely impacted the island in terms of revenue, because we are very tourist dependent. About 80–90% of the revenue for the island comes through tourism. And so when our airport shut down and the world shut down, restaurants right now, you cannot dine in. Bars are closed. A lot of the more tourist type attractions, tours, things like that are either not operational or they're at very limited capacity. So for us, for our kids, for their lifestyle, aside from not going to school every single day in person, I think they've not had a whole lot of change, thankfully. They've still been able to, go out and enjoy the outdoors because they weren't going to bars and clubs, right?
Right.
But for us adults, it's definitely changed. We haven't had a proper date night in a while because they've been home, because, we haven't wanted to go out to restaurants and be out in public spaces in terms of not wanting to bring anything home here. And we only have one hospital on the island. So, being really mindful to just be as careful as we can so as to not have to, overrun the hospital with our potential nonsense. You know what I'm saying? So, but otherwise, the island has done the best that they can, I think, to keep us from having too much community spread.
Yeah, with regards to my work, I did have, when I first came here, the position had me coming in every single day at more or less 8 o'clock in the morning, and then I wouldn't leave until 4 or 5 at night. Now it's very flexible. I'm working from home today, and there's some days when I don't need to go into the office, and other days when I still do go in maybe in the afternoon for a few hours. So in that way, it's been a benefit because I've been able to work from home and have that flexibility to be around. But it definitely has changed in terms of the culture at the institution where I am now, in terms of there being an expectation that you're there every single day, all day. For a while, for the entire last year, we took all the students off the campus. We didn't make them leave, but a lot of them did leave. But now we've made it mandatory for certain semesters of students to be back on island, to be on the campus. And so we have some in-person instruction as well as some teaching that continues to happen online.
Well, you have had, much, I guess, like much of the rest of the world, there has been, a huge rise in cases. And then, of course, there's a bit of a lockdown, and then the lockdown starts to ease up, and then there's another lockdown. Have you noticed that on your island as well, then?
Oh, yeah, definitely. When we got our first case, the first case that happened March 2020, I think it was the end of March, they completely shut us down. We were only able to be out from 7 a.m. till noon. And the only places you could go was the pharmacy, the clinic, the grocery store, and the gas station. Everything else, even like the mom and pop shops were closed. It was only like the major supermarkets. There were lines, everything. And we managed to keep our cases really low for a while. And then they opened things up, and we opened the airport back up, and people started coming back to visit family and the cases. So we've definitely had a roller coaster, and that's what we're hitting now after summer tourism kind of opened up, and we really started getting influxes of, unfortunately, there's been rumors, people are traveling with tests that may or may not be valid or legal or correct. And so they, the hotels started to, workers in the hotels started to have cases, and then they would go home, obviously. And so we're at an all-time high right now, which is why everything is starting to close back down again, where they're initiating some mandatory vaccination among the public sector, workers in the public sector. We're shutting some of the beaches down, schools remote. And so we're anticipating that in another month and a half, the cases will probably go down again, just in time for the winter holidays. So yeah, we definitely experienced that roller coaster.
Well, are you not heading into a fairly popular time in the Caribbean for tourism?
Yeah, we are.
Yeah,
November. Yeah, November. We've had an surprisingly high summer tourist traffic Normally the summer is not the best time because it's hurricane season, it's rainy season, and it's very, very hot. But I think, you know, people in the States, Canada, the UK are wanting to get out. So we've had a really high tourist numbers this summer. And so I think my guess is perhaps we're doing this in anticipation of wanting to be able to reopen for our normal season, which is usually November, December through, you know, about March or so. So I think we're doing this probably in part in anticipation of getting our numbers under control so we can reopen again.
Well, and hopefully it doesn't create another surge, as most sort of tourism places around the world have seen. The minute they start opening things up again, the cases surge. How medically are you folks situated there? You know, what is the possibilities if you do see a huge increase in cases? Are you able to take care of that medically right there on the island?
Well, we have one hospital, so there's only one major hospital on the island, and then we have one dedicated COVID facility, and I do believe they just recently opened a new one. So at last count, I believe we had something around 60 beds specifically for COVID patients, and so I really don't know. I mean, you know, the unfortunate thing about being on an island, unlike, you know, in the States where I know they were having these issues as well, we can't just be, you know, ambulanced over to a different hospital. It is what it is. You kind of have to just hope for the best, I guess, pray for the best, whatever it might be. So I think they're doing the best that they can in terms of keeping people, you know, trying to get everyone, you know, maybe vaccinated at least to help reduce the hospital numbers. But honestly, being on an island, there are very limited resources. There are, you know, doctors. Yeah, it's not like the States or Canada or a larger, you know, country where there's multiple options. We have one hospital, a few little clinics, the one COVID facility. I think we have about 60 beds, I think, for COVID. And we have a population of about 90,000 with the expat population, about 75,000 just locals. So if it gets high, we're not in the best position, I would say. But
I mean, I guess living on an island it could be great or it could be awful, you know, for that exact same reason. You've got a fairly small population. If you are able to make sure that COVID doesn't enter the shores, I mean, New Zealand did it. And I mean, we're talking way more people there, but New Zealand managed for a while. Anyways, they've just been hit again. But on an island like that, if you're careful allowing people to get onto the island, then the possibilities that you could just live a normal life like you ever, you know, like you have before always, is there. But the minute, and that's where the bad side comes in, the minute that all of a sudden you have, you know, COVID hitting the shores, then because you are an island again, and you're in close proximity to each other, it's a small landmass, the ability for it to just shoot off. And like you said, one hospital, 60, but that's not a lot when you talk about the population. And then you add in the tourism season, you know, what does that do to your population? Does that double, triple, quadruple your population?
Yeah, it does. And especially, talking with the yachting industry, I know like initially, you know, we have a lot of boats that come in and, you know, the testing and the screening process is very different for, you know, yachts that are coming in versus the airplanes. You know, the airplanes are coming into one port, they're coming through one little doorway, and so they have to be checked. Whereas here we've, you know, definitely heard stories about, you know, people kind of bypassing the main entryways and finding little slips off and doing, you know, so it's been kind of interesting because I think, you know, as much as we want the tourist revenue, we want the dollars, it's good for the country, it's good for the economy. And obviously people need to move about the world. That is a thing we do. We're social creatures, so to speak, but it also can really, you know, cause an impact that I think a lot of people, when they're from larger countries with like higher medical infrastructure levels, don't really realize like what that actually does, like what bringing in, you know, a virus like this can do to an island that's much smaller and much less equipped in some ways to deal with it. Yeah.
Well, I guess the thing that we all have to concentrate on is that, you know, it's not, I think people try to circumvent the rules, but it's not about us necessarily. It's about our fellow human being. And it is lovely to be able to go to places like the Caribbean and enjoy the natural beauty that is there and the ability to have that vacation. But take care, follow the rules. It's not so hard to follow the rules. It's fairly simple. And especially if you are talking yachting, a lot of the times you just stay on board. You can have your provisions brought to you. It's very simple. You get a test. If you pass the test, then great, go on in. And of course, the Caribbean is quite confusing to a certain degree as well, because, the greater world sees the Caribbean as, sort of one area, but it is different countries, right? And each country could be, each island has its own set of rules completely when it comes to COVID restrictions and protocol, et cetera. So, wherever you're planning on going, make sure that you follow what they're doing, ask what they're doing, find out the rules and regulations, find out, how many cases are on the island, whether or not you have to quarantine, whether or not there's a special place you have to go to quarantine, whether or not you can quarantine on your yacht, et cetera, et cetera. Just do it. I mean, it's so much simpler.
Yeah, definitely agreed. And they change. That's the other thing. These mandates, we've had like weekly changes. We have weekly press conferences where our cabinet meets every week to assess the situation. And so it's literally, we're changing our lifestyle in little ways, but every single week there's something. Now I think the next mandate that's coming through, I think starting Monday, I think you can't even come to our island without a vaccination. Before it was vaccinated and a negative test, or unvaccinated with a negative test. Now it's negative test and a vaccination.
Yeah, you have to have at least one of the shots, so at least one dose of one of the vaccinations in order to arrive on island to have access. Yeah.
Well, and I mean, the one thing that I don't understand is that, for people to just kind of throw all caution to the wind because they're vaccinated. Well, you can still pass on COVID. You can still be a carrier. So, I do see, and as we discussed prior to coming on air, the fact that I spend a lot of time on social media, people are complaining, oh, why do we have to get the test? I've been vaccinated. Well, we're talking about your fellow human beings here. Just because you've been vaccinated and you're okay, it doesn't mean that you can't carry that on to somebody else who perhaps hasn't been vaccinated due to health reasons, or hasn't been vaccinated due to, there are some countries where there's not a lot of vaccinations available, or they are just slow in rolling out the vaccinations. We have to take care, not only for ourselves, our families, but also for other people and their loved ones as well.
Yes, that's definitely good. I think I don't know what a better name would be, but I think especially like friends of mine, my generation, like vaccination is always meant like, oh, you're good. Like you don't have it, you won't get it. You know what I mean? Like you take your MMR, like I gave my kids, they got their measles, mumps, rubella when they were babies. And so I'm not worried for them, but this isn't the same type of a vaccination. It's more of like like a flu shot. You can take a flu shot, but you still might get the flu. And so we look at it differently. It's not a vaccination. And I think we're so stuck on the old school version of this is a guaranteed thing. You're 99.9%, protected, but it's not that. It's just, you're less likely to be as sick. You're less likely, but you can still, so you still need to move with caution. And I think like here on the island, like anytime you're out, you have to wear a mask. If you go into any buildings, you have to be fully masked. They make you sanitize your hands. There's wash stations. Many places actually will take the temperature before you go into the facility. If you're in town, even outside, but in like crowded, the town area, walking down the streets, you're supposed to be masked. And, I think people are following that for the most part. I think sometimes our tourists don't always want to follow that. They want to enjoy it, which I can understand fully. I mean, you want to go on vacation. If where you're coming from, you don't have to wear a mask because you're vaccinated. Why do I have to do it here or wherever in the world? So, but
I think that tourists, no matter where you are in the world, they tend to think that they're on vacation. So any law at all doesn't exist. But yeah, that's not really the case. It happens everywhere. I know in Mallorca it happens as well. The British come over and they tend to think that, how they behave back home isn't the way they have to behave here. That's not true. But it is. It's a vacation mentality. We're taking a vacation from our regular daily grind. So that includes everything. I guess you can't fault people for feeling that way, but you know, reality is a different situation entirely.
It's a balance.
Yeah, no, well, you know what? It sounds though that, you know, hopefully these things change quickly and we're going to get a handle on the situation. You know, I think I'm really tired of hearing the new normal over and over and over again. But I just really would like to get, you know, I've had a couple of trips canceled this year already. And I just want to get back to life, you know, just to living and not to worry about, you know, we had a discussion earlier about the fact that both of us have children that are at risk. And I just want to start living again and not worrying about those things, you know, to be able to go out and not have to worry about, oh, you know, is my son, you know, he shouldn't be too close, or are those people getting too close? What happens? I don't want to have to think about that. I want to be able to say, let's go to the beach and just let him be a kid and go to the beach. And hopefully, you know, maybe within the next 6 months to a year, we can all start to come back to something like that. That would be ideal.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where it does really stay with you wherever you go. And just yesterday morning, I was coming from the beach and I saw a lady that she was getting out of her car. And now, and in the normal conditions, I would have walked straight directly towards her and then walked to my car. But because I saw her and I didn't have a mask on, I was working out, I walked around to get into my car. I was just thinking, like, this is really crazy. I can't walk like right directly towards this woman because there's this concern about this virus, but that's the reality of it. Everywhere you go, you find yourself making adjustments because you know that this thing is out there.
Yeah, it's difficult. It's definitely changing the way we see the world. And you know, being in Europe and especially in Spain, the Spanish people are they kiss on both cheeks. And that's their greeting. And you're seeing, you know, some people are still doing it, but you're seeing there's a discomfort because they go to do what they've been doing for centuries. And then all of a sudden they sort of stop halfway through, realizing that this could it could be deadly, you know, for whoever it is. And it's such a shame to see because, you know, that human connection, we as humans, we definitely need that physical touch, that physical contact. And for that to have to stop, it's such a shame. So fingers crossed, you know, something changes and we can get back to living our lives.
Mm-hmm.
Well, how do people check you guys out and follow your family blog and find out what you're up to, the La Vida Lindsay? I guess you have, I've been actually reading on your website, and you both have separate websites as well, correct?
That's correct. Gabriella, go ahead.
Well, yeah, so so we do have a YouTube channel, La Vida Lindsay, where we share, we're still doing a couple times a month.
Once a month.
Once a month.
Once a month vlogs.
Yeah, so when we first moved, we were doing like every week. We've kind of slowed down. It was kind of funny when we first started the vlog. It was, well, look at this thing we're doing, and now it's kind of like life. So now we've kind of slowed down. So now we do once a month, but you can follow our entire journey from like before we moved, preparing for our move, all on our YouTube channel, which is La Vida Lindsay. And then we each have our own separate accounts. So I'm on Instagram primarily. At Gabriella and Lindsay is my Instagram handle, and I share a lot of our journey. But then also I'm a copywriter and coach, so I share a lot about writing and coaching for entrepreneurs. And then,
so if you're on social media, you really want to follow Gabriella because she's much more active. She has lots of stories that she puts up every day on Instagram. I have an Instagram account. And I do post there on a regular basis, but not anything like Gabriella. So
but you blog every week.
I do blog every week. So I do have a website. My website is lindsay.phd.com. And I do have an Instagram at Vernon Lindsay PhD, and I'm on Facebook as well. But
well, that's
Gabriella,
you're a doctor, right?
Yeah, yeah, something like that. Yeah,
I had to get that in there. Wonderful.
Gabriella, if you're really interested in following our family, I would recommend looking at the vlog on YouTube if you're on YouTube. But if you're on Instagram or social media platforms, Gabriella's pages are the way to go about it.
Well, you know what? We're going to make sure to provide all of the links, including the doctor's links below this interview when it airs. I'm sorry, I had to tell everybody you were a doctor. I warned you. Listen, you guys, it's been an absolute pleasure to get to know you. And one day, hopefully, I'll be able to get to the Caribbean. I've never been, and it is on my bucket list to head over there. And hopefully this December, if everything goes the way it's supposed to, we'll be in that area. So I thank you so much for your time, and hopefully we can get caught up again at some stage in the future, and we can bring you back to the audience and let them know how you're doing, and hopefully at a time when things are back to normal.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Thank you so much for having us. It was lovely.
Yeah, I look forward to meeting you also.
Nice. Once again, you've been listening to Gabriella and Vernon Lindsay from La Vida Lindsay. We will provide, as I said, all of their links below this interview when it airs. Thank you for tuning in. My name is Rhea. I have been your host. We'll see you again next week.